Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Gun.Smoke for the NES, and I'm playing this one on a retro USB AVS. Gun.Smoke was released in 1985 by Capcom and is a vertical scrolling run-and-gun shooter. This is actually a game that I forgot about for a while, and when I remembered it, I remembered how much I actually like this game. I played this one way back with a friend, and I remember a lot of button mashing. And I think we might have beaten it. Anyway, this game is Gun.Smoke, and that's gun.smoke. There's a period separating the words. If you look at the cartridge or the loading screen, you can see the period. I'm wondering if this was a thing they had to do to not get mixed up with the US television show from years before. Who knows? Anyway, flat out, this is a good game. It's put together well and works on just about all levels. I have no glaring problems with this one, and generally my research seems to indicate this game is held in pretty high regard by a lot of people. And I think it should be. This game is great. This one was actually released for a few other systems. It started as an arcade game, although I understand it was different than this, but there was a PC release, a BBC Micro, an Amstrad, and the Commodore 64 had a version as well. I'll have to check out the Commodore version sometime. Anyway, the job here is to clean up a town in the countryside of criminals. You happen to be a gunslinger, and you roll into town with a death wish and, apparently, immunity from the law. You shoot everything. By the end of this game, you have killed hundreds, if not thousands of people. You gunned them down like dogs in the street, leaving their bodies to rot for the vultures in the middle of the town. When all is said and done, I'm guessing the town and countryside must look and smell amazing. Capcom did this one right. They took what the NES had and they worked with it really well. Specifically, this one works great with a controller. You move around with the gamepad, of course, and obviously the buttons are for firing. The B button fires your guns off to the left at an angle, and the right button fires your guns off to a right angle. If you press both at the same time, they fire in the center. This is something you get used to pretty quick, hopefully, and then you just run around and shoot everything before they shoot you. Until you get to the boss at the end of the stage, you're constantly moving upwards with this one, always upwards. The speed of the screen scrolling is actually pretty comfortable. It's not too slow, it's not too fast, it seems to progress really well. Now, in this one you're moving through a town, or terrain, and this is what you'd expect in a classic western town setting. There's lots of sand, of course, and little details you'd expect in this type of setting. Buildings, barrels, fences, cactus, stuff like that. It works. The goal of each stage is, of course, to get to the boss at the end and then defeat the boss. But you can't just dodge your way to the end of these games. You need to find a wanted poster somewhere in the level first. You'll find this by shooting a specific barrel, probably. Or maybe you can also buy the wanted poster from a vendor if you have the funds. This brings us to basically items and buying stuff. You're constantly shooting in this one and killing enemies. You're also shooting and destroying barrels. When an enemy dies, screaming in the streets, or if a barrel bursts, an item might appear. There are a few different items, and it's strange that the manual doesn't actually tell you what all these items do. I looked through this manual a dozen times. It doesn't tell you what all the items do, only some of them. It doesn't tell you about cowboy boots, or rifles. The boots, when you pick them up, they increase your speed on screen a little bit. It doesn't speed you up a ton, just enough. You can hold up to 4 at once. You press select and you can see what you're actually currently having. The rifles increase your shot range. This is very useful and not explained in the manual. You might also see these pinwheel type icons from time to time. These are extra lives if it's red. If it's blue, it's invulnerability for a while. In the manual, they call these yashiki. But I'm guessing that's because the manual was written in Japan. In the Old West, I don't think they would have called these yashiki. They would have called them pinwheels. I think, anyway. Pinwheels seems normal. Unfortunately, you can only collect up to 3 lives at one time, so you can't just stockpile these. If you see a POW icon that appears on screen, if you grab it, it'll wipe the screen of enemies. They're great to get when you need them. Enemies can also drop money bags. You collect these as you run around, and when you talk to the townsfolk, there are 1 or 2 icons that you can talk to. You can buy stuff. A little menu appears. They can sell guns, they can sell a horse, they can sell a wanted poster. This is all good stuff that you need. You're going to want to buy all the guns you can afford, of course. you're going to want to get a machine gun, a shotgun, a magnum. All reasonable implements of death for your insane slaughter of all human beings that cross your path. Some things about guns in this game. They have limited ammunition, unlike your standard shot. When you put a hole in an enemy where there was no hole prior, and you leave their children with one less parent to live with, they might drop a pile of bullets. You scoop up the ammo, and of course it applies to any secondary weapon that you've purchased. It just fills them all. You switch to a secondary weapon by pressing select and moving the cursor to the desired weapon. When you come out of the select screen, that's the gun you're using. If you die while holding a secondary weapon, you lose that weapon and have to buy it again. You don't lose all guns, just that one you were holding. Now, with the secondary guns, unlike your standard 6-shooters, you need to pay attention to your ammunition. If you continue to unload, you'll definitely run out. I find that when you switch to one of these weapons, this is when you need to sort of shoot only when an enemy is viewable on screen, and you have to spend a little bit more time waiting for them to come into range. With the standard shot, I find myself just mashing buttons and shooting indiscriminately because you never run out. But you do want to try and have special weapons for the boss fight. It usually is very helpful. There are a total of 3 secondary weapons. You get a shotgun, which is a spread shot, has a greater area of effect, which is nice. The machine gun is an auto-fire, and the magnum is a more powerful shot that goes pretty far. They're all useful one way or the other. Bottom line is that you want to try to have at least one of these at the end of the stage because it really helps. You can also buy a bomb. If you have the funds, it's not bad to have for sure. It'll get you out of jams. You can also buy or find horses. Horses are great. They absorb extra damage, they give you more maneuverability. Basically, you can pick up an icon in certain stages, or you can buy one. And then the screen will freeze, and the horse will come walking into town. You jump on back and start racing around. You're going to feel like a total badass when you get on your steed, and you start gunning down your enemies. So there's a boss at the end of each stage, and if you don't have a wanted poster, the level is going to continue to repeat itself. This means you have to find it, or buy it eventually, because that's how you get to the boss. And if you don't, the stage is going to keep going on for a while. Probably until you get enough money to buy one if you can't find it. I suppose this could easily be a tactic just used to gather more funds, especially on the early levels. It might be useful. The bosses, as you would imagine, they have different patterns that you have to account for in order to get a shot in. There are a total of 6 stages in this one, and I think that's on par with a lot of NES games. Probably it would be strange if they were fewer. It'd probably be kind of odd if they were more. In terms of difficulty, I think the bosses are reasonable. They're not the easiest, but they're certainly doable. The music in this one is pretty good too. I think we've got a pretty decent NES jingle here. It seems to fit with, well, the NES and an Old West theme. It's not too difficult to listen to. I imagine if you play it for a long time, maybe. This is one of those games that works so well, I start to wonder why they didn't just clone this game and change the sprites to a different setting. It seems like everything works here. I mean, they could have skinned this one to other settings. Maybe a future setting. Something like that would have really worked. Imagine this one as a cyberpunk experience. Well, according to online sources, there are 2 cheats to this game. One will change the controls from the buttons and map them to the joystick, and then one of them will start the game with a machine gun. I haven't tried them yet, but I'll put the codes in the description, and maybe somebody else will use them. This is one of those games that works really good with the NES Advantage controller. Being able to save your thumbs with auto-fire, and also to slow down the game when it gets crazy, something like that definitely helps out a game like this. It really works. Well, that's all I have today for Gun.Smoke for the NES. Thanks for stopping by to take a look. If you like this type of thing, please feel free to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I hope to catch you on another video.